William Nicholls here, and I am super pumped to bring you another amazing interview here on the Will Nicholls Show. And my guest today is the fabulous Muna Fadel. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, so Muna was actually a client of mine like over a year ago now. How did we even meet? I'm trying to think. I think it was through Shane, right? My
I
friend
was
Shane.
literally thinking about that today, and I was like, how did I find Will? This was, yeah, this was near COVID, or it was in COVID, and I think I saw one of like Shane's posts, and I was like, oh, this guy's cool. And then I started following him, and then your page ended up just coming up. And it's funny because I was following you for, I want to say, maybe 2 months, and I kept seeing your posts, and I like had the feeling I want to sign up with you, and I didn't even know why. You were some random guy. I didn't even know anything about you, and then I had that feeling for so long that one day I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna message him. So I think I messaged you back in like May or June of like 2020. I'm pretty sure it was kind of fresh when COVID started, and then yeah, we started coaching like in June, and I went with you for over a year, I think.
Yeah.
You coached me.
Yeah, we were working together for a while.
Yeah.
So how did you get started in? So for those who don't know, you're a jump rope coach, right? So you,
Yes.
which is really cool because no one is a jump rope coach. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's such a niche thing, which is awesome, and I like talking to people that are in kind of really
Yeah.
small niches like that. So how did you get started on this journey of entrepreneurship and where you're at right now?
Yeah, so it all started after I got bit by a tick. So it's funny, I was gonna say I was a normal, healthy person, but I actually wasn't at all. I knew
Mm-hmm.
nothing about nutrition. So I went away to school for hockey. So I was always an athlete my whole life. So I played hockey like my whole life, went away to school for it, and then I came back home, stopped playing, basically started eating like crap, gained all this weight, and then a couple months later I got bit by a tick when I was hiking in like upstate New York. Then I started to get really sick, like cystic acne, chronic fatigue, asthma, all these food sensitivities. And I was like, okay, I have to do something about this. So that's when I got more into like diet and nutrition. That's also the exact same time I got into jump rope. So I started jump rope June/July of 2019, so about a year before I kind of came in contact with you. And I just became obsessed with it, and I wasn't even that good, but after like 1 month, I was like, I want to coach people. It was just this
Mm-hmm.
weird feeling I had. I was like, this is it. Because I graduated from university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just working at Starbucks at the time. And as soon as I got into jump rope, I was like, okay, this is my purpose. So I made my Instagram account, I started just randomly posting, and then I met you, and you're actually like one of the biggest factors in my like entrepreneur like journey, because I didn't start coaching and quit my job until I met you, because that's when I developed the courage and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
always super grateful to you for that. But that's kind of like a short story of how it all started. So suffering with Lyme disease, got into working out. Now I'm on the carnivore diet. It's been a year since I've been on the carnivore diet, so a lot has kind of happened since then.
For sure. And talk a little bit about, so you recently got back into practicing Islam, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, and did you grow up Islamic?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm born Muslim. I have four siblings, so we have a big family. I kind of my siblings and like parents kind of laugh when I say this, but it is how I feel. But I kind of consider myself a bit of a revert.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was one of those people that was like, yeah, I'm Muslim, but that was it. Kind of
Right.
stopped there.
Yeah.
And I just always struggled with my relationship with God. It was like I always wanted to feel connected to Him, and I never did. And so I always prayed. Like I've always prayed my five prayers. I've always fasted, but that's it. And to me, honestly, that's the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And then really like the last 8 or 9 months is when I really like got back into my faith, cut off like a lot of people in my life, changed so many of my habits, and then Ramadan just happened March 20th to April 20th, and that's when I decided to put on the hijab. So I want to say it happened fast, but it was kind of over the span of like 9 to 12 months is when I really came back.
Right. What was that? What was that kind of? Was it more of like an epiphany, or was it a gradual development in your relationship with God that really pushed you and inspired you to start practicing it? I guess a little bit more seriously, right, than you were prior
Yeah.
to however many months ago.
Yeah, I would say it was gradual. It was something that was always in my heart, and I was just ignoring it and like pushing it off and pushing it off. But I knew that there was a lot of things I was doing that basically I shouldn't be, and I felt like God was trying to pull me back,
Hmm.
which I am super grateful for. So honestly, it all changed when I started to like memorize Quran. I've always known like a little bit, but I haven't done any in a while. So I started memorizing back in September, and when I really started to read it, because like I've read the Quran multiple times before in the English translation, but what we say in our religion is like God, like a lot of people's hearts are like blinded.
Hmm.
Like people are like blind and deaf, and like they can read and see all the proof in the world, but it's never gonna like hit them until basically they're ready for it or God opens up their heart. So I read the Quran and stuff like that before, and I was like, no, I don't really get it. And then when I started this time around, things started to make a lot more sense, which I'm very grateful for. And then it was like reading Quran, starting to memorize, and then slowly starting to realize that like there were certain people in my life that shouldn't be. There were certain things I was doing that I shouldn't be. I started dressing more modestly, and then that kind of
Hmm.
led me to wearing the hijab. So it was kind of like a little step by step gradual process, I would say.
Right. So it's kind of like you're, letting in more of that. You could call it divine influence over a period of time.
Yeah, and this is something I actually really wanted to talk to you about because I got so deep into spirituality and
Hmm.
self help, and I'm telling you, just this is my personal experience, that took me away from God
Hmm.
so much. And that was like a really hard thing for me. Like, I was so, it kind of cringe to me now, but I was so into like crystals and like astrology and this
Hmm.
and that, blah, blah, blah. And it just completely took me away from my religion because I feel like it just made me think, oh, I can just do it all. I don't need God. It's just like
Hmm.
through me. So that's something I was curious to talk to you about and maybe hear your opinion on a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the function of religion and the reason why religions were set up was to connect us with God. Right. That was like it was to create a sense, basically a process for us to connect with God. Right. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, like the three big religions.
Yeah,
Even Buddhism, to some extent, and some of the more Eastern religions as well. Like their core function is to connect us with God. What happens though is, these religions through years and years and years, and I would say probably Islam's one of the um, least corrupted, religions
yeah,
because of the fact that they just haven't swayed from the core teachings, even
for
as much
sure.
as Christianity. So what happens is man, man corrupts. God doesn't corrupt. Man corrupts. So when we have men and women, mostly men, throughout history, as in these positions of religious leadership, well, that's obviously going to be open to scrutiny. I mean,
Yeah,
things like the Bible have been edited however many times from the original, text as it was put together. Not to mention, when you now pass that message through an individual, now there's obviously going to be a bunch of other biases and sorts of opinions that come into it. But I think what happens is the when we look at modern religion, we kind of see it as this cult, right?
oh yeah,
We see it as this like cult run by basically corrupt individuals, and there's corruption everywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter where you look, whatever religion,
oh yeah, oh yeah.
whatever practice. I mean, it's across the board.
Hmm.
But I think what happens is people. It's kind of like a polarity, right? The pendulum swings so far each way, and myself included. Like I've definitely seen on my own journey a deep, into Christianity mostly, and the kind of that sort of sect, and then swaying far away from it, just being able to see all the mistakes and the corruption. For me, it was like when I saw all these Catholic priests come out after they were molesting kids and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, well, if this is really if this is the religion that I stand for, like, this is kind of disgusting. And so at that point I just revoked it completely, and I was like, wow. Because, and I still believe this, that at the core essence of all religions, there's the line is, and the pathway is to God. So it's like, that's the core truth, right? That's the core truth that interweaves it all. And I think when people go down the path of spirituality, more or less like the New Agey kind of spirituality, then what they're trying to do is they're trying to find that thread. But the problem is the reason religions exist and have existed for thousands and thousands of years is because of the traditions, and because of the rituals, and because of the practices, because they've created a process. Whereas the difference between a process and a journey is, a journey you're just kind of walking around and hoping you're figuring out where you're going, right? And that's kind of how a lot of people that are quote unquote spiritual, that's how they exist, where they're just kind of floating around in the void. They haven't connected to that thread. And that thread to me is God. It's like it's a pathway that God reveals to us. You can call it destiny, you can call it our dharma, if you look at it from that perspective. But it's basically, our path. It's our mission from God. And I believe we all have a mission here that 100% is unique to each of us. So I think it's very easy for people to sway. Now, people can do this from a religious sense too. I mean, a lot of people say, if I go to church on the weekends, I'm a whatever. I'm a Christian. I'm a Muslim. I'm a this. I'm a that. If I do my prayers each night and each morning, then I'm a good human being.
Good.
Yeah. That, and then that's it, right? Where we feel like we're outsourcing that, and I think that's just as wrong as spirituality, because both the commonality between those two things is we're outsourcing our relationship with God. And I don't see religion as outsourcing our relationship with God. I think it can be outsourcing our religion with God, but I think at the core root of religion, we're trying to get closer with God through community, through the Word of God, through texts, through rituals, through all sorts of processes that have been laid out and proven time and time again over years and years and years. So you can outsource it either way. But I think until you know God yourself, and a lot of spiritual people, the problem with the whole New Agey movement is that they pretend they know God, but they don't know God. And you know God based on how you live your life. I mean, that's how you just look at a person and you see how they're living their life, and you can tell whether they know God or not. I mean, you can see it in their eyes, and you look into a lot of these people's eyes, and you don't see a strong rooted connection with God. 100%. You see this like facade that is, pretending to be all love and light and spirit, bliss and happiness, but it's just masking all this garbage. Versus if you look at a religious person, I'm talking about a religious person that is not just going to church or the mosque on the weekends or whatever, but I'm talking about someone who's a practicing Catholic or a practicing Muslim or that, and genuinely is their intention is to live life through God, with God, know God, and live life for God. And when you see people that live like that, regardless of their past history or whatever, there is a certain spark within them. There's a certain essence that you can just tell they're content. You can tell there's a peace within them. 100%. And that to me is the biggest difference, because you look at a lot of these New Age type people and they're tormented. I mean, you look at them, they look brutal, right? Yeah, no, it's so true. And I love what you said about masking, because genuinely, most people are just masking the emptiness, and you can usually see through it. You can see through it really well when you aren't masking it, right? When you're genuinely seeking to know God and live through God and walk with God and live for God in whatever way, shape, or form that looks like. I'm not here to judge how that relationship looks with each individual. An individual might not have any sort of apt for a traditional religion. That's whatever, each to each their own. But I do see I see the importance of tradition, especially in this day and age. I see the importance of coming back to proven processes, and I think that the dominant the dominant kind of teachings and the dominant traditions in the kind of mainstream top religions, I think are there for a reason, and there's there's a reason for that. But I also I also can see, and I'm not so hypnotized by it to think that there's no corruption whatsoever. We're human, right? So if there's any sort of interaction with human, then you're going to innately come into corruption. You're going to innately come into sin. You're going to innately come into some haram activities, and and that's just the way that it works, right?
And that's how God created us, and that's just the reality of things. And that's what I tell people all the time. Like, there are so many corrupt Muslims. There are so many corrupt Christians. Like, nothing is black and white at all. Like, it is all so different from person to person. But that's another thing I was thinking a lot about too, because if you even look at like New Age versus like religious people, a big thing is like, oh, what's with all these rules? Like, God isn't allowing you to do this, and that. Like, just live your life, do whatever you want. You make the rules. Like, that whole movement. And I used to, I would say, agree with that to some extent before I kind of came back to my religion. And now I have such a deeper understanding that God does not forbid you to do anything that is not harmful to you. And we could list so many different things, but if you even think of like drinking, weed, like premarital like dating or sex or gambling, interest, like if you just logically think about it, like what is the actual benefit? Like if these were things that were truly, truly benefiting you, I think, God would be allowing it. And a lot of people are like, oh, just live your life, who cares if you drink every once in a while, this and that. And I'm not judging anyone that does. I have many of my own sins that I did in the past, but I think when you get to understanding that God is genuinely trying just to protect you and looking out for you, that's for me when I reached like a whole level of peace where I was like, okay, he's actually on my side. Like, he's forbidding things for a reason.
For sure. And you kind of see the way that the pendulum swings when people move into that. I mean, there's a very fine line between radical New Ageism and hedonism, and deep down, I mean, I truly believe that deep down we know when we're overdoing it. We know when what we're doing is not in complete alignment with our conscience and with God. I mean, that's why after, if you're like get wasted the next day, you feel like crap. I mean, you feel, and obviously there's physical impacts of that, but most of it's the spiritual and conscientious impacts of that, of how our conscience is dominating our body. So that's a huge component of it. I mean, deep down, if you unmask all the kind of noise and limiting beliefs and biases and all that sort of thing, I mean, you can hear your heart, and you can hear what God is saying through your heart, and that cuts through all the noise. But you have to cultivate that relationship, and most people don't.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to take some initiative and have some intention towards it. And intention is like the biggest thing in my life now, where before I was just living so mindlessly, and I'm not perfect now, and I'm still working on it day to day, but it's like every little thing, like doing it for the sake of God, or doing it like with God in your heart, and having everything be so much more intentional just makes life so much easier. Because I feel like I'm still struggling, but I was struggling so much before because I felt like it was just me, and I'm like, I can't do this on my own, I'm not strong enough. But that is the truth. We're not strong enough as humans. We are literally designed that way. That's why we need that connection with God, so that we can do the things that we need to do. Because if you have all the pressure and responsibility on yourself, then it can become very difficult. But as you said, you still have to do the work. You still have to do it. You can't just sit back and be like, all right, God, what's next?
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed myself, shifting into just from writing intentions down, right? Things that I want to create in this world and my goals and that sort of thing. Just a simple act of adding God willing, at the end of it.
Exactly.
is has been extremely powerful. And to be honest, it's made my goals happen a lot faster
Yeah, I
than
love that.
before, right? Because yeah, the truth is we don't know. Like we can only see so far, right? And we don't know until we create that deep connection with God in whatever way, shape, or form we need to, right? And then
Yeah.
once that connection is there, I mean, it can't be severed, and that's the cool part. Is
So true.
it's always there, and I think, yeah, you look at people, like, just using the example of atheists, right? And to be honest, I don't think that atheism is a lack of a lack of belief in God. They just make, you know, basically suffering and
Hmm.
the lack of God their God, right? Like atheism itself is a
Yeah.
religion,
Yeah.
so which is ironic, right?
It is ironic.
Yeah. But when you live from that place, what do you have to support you in times of suffering? What do you have to support you in times of pain? What do you have to support
Exactly.
you when you're struggling with your will, when you're struggling with your mind, when you're struggling? And people will say community and stuff, but community can only help you so much,
Oh yeah.
and community is a huge part of it for sure. I mean, you look at the difference between people who have a very supportive community to be able to uplift them versus
For
people
sure.
who don't. Those are night and day experiences. But at the end of the day, if you don't have that connection to something bigger than yourself that's running the show, and you can call it what you want. I like to call it just God. You
Yeah.
can call it Allah. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But I
Exactly.
prefer, to have a direct experience with that. And in having that direct experience, every aspect of my life benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And I want to share one thing and kind of form it with a question as well. So a big thing that um, people talk about a lot in our religions with people that are struggling specifically is like Allah says, sometimes I will take away everything and everyone from you just to remind you that it's only you and I in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that written on my whiteboard because I feel like for me personally, it's the most important reminder, and that's really what it's felt like for me. Like, it's crazy how many times you think you can hit rock bottom, but then once you do, you actually know
Mm-hmm.
it's rock bottom. And that's what I felt like. It felt like I lost everyone that I was close to, that was super important to me. You know, my business wasn't doing great, my physical health wasn't doing great. It was just so many things were happening at once, and I had no other option. The only option was to keep going down that path
Mm-hmm.
and keep hating myself and hating my life, or to really try. And I had to be so intentional about really trying to surrender to God, because I think it's one thing to want to connect with Him, like that's great, but to actually be intentional about fully surrendering and letting go of control was really hard for me, because I'm like, I can do it, I can get better, I can
Mm-hmm.
do this, I can do that, but girl, I couldn't do that, you know. So that's something I like to talk about with people, because I think it's very easy for people to think, oh, why would God do this to me? God hates me. God's not looking out for me. Yada yada yada. But I truly believe everything that He's doing, He's just trying to, tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, like I am here for you, but I need you to walk towards me as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, yeah, and I've seen that in my background's more Christian and Catholic,
Yeah.
but even in the Bible they have stories of that. Like there's an example in Job where the devil comes to God and says, he's your favorite. Let
Mhm.
me have a shot at him. Let's see if
Mhm.
he's really as virtuous as you say he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he took away everything, and he lost everything: his family, his farm, all his wealth, everything, and still he had faith. And I think that's always a good example of the importance of maintaining that faith, regardless of where we're at in life, because faith. And I say this about people's character, but it also applies to faith. Faith is not tested when times are good.
Oh, exactly.
Your character is not tested when times are good.
It's easy. Yeah, you're chilling.
Yeah, I mean it is in different ways, right? Like
Mhm.
your gratitude is tested when times are good. Are you still able to
Very true. Very
pray and
true.
be grateful for what you have even when things are going great, right? Are you still able to maintain a very virtuous and positive character when times are going great? Or do you kind of slip into degeneracy? Do you slip
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
hedonism? And then when times are not going great, that's when we're really tested, right? How much do you really believe, right? How much are you really willing to surrender to God? How much are you really willing to show that you stand by what you claim to
Yeah.
believe,
Yeah. That's powerful.
right?
Yeah.
Because
That's
those are,
so
I mean,
true.
I look at any moment in my life. All the only times I've really, I mean, the hardest times in my life I have are the moments that I've developed the deepest relationship with God. It's never when
So
times are
true.
great,
So
you know.
true.
Times are great. We tend to forget God in those times, which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate, and we're forced to experience those moments and times when we lose everything in order to gain it all. Because that's what really matters at the end of the day. When you lose the materialism or you lose the relationships, or you lose whatever, you're gaining more than all of that value combined,
Yeah.
right? You're gaining the value of your relationship with God. And to me, that is the most valuable thing that you
Oh.
could gain. That's the most valuable thing there is.
Oh, 100%. And I'm curious for you and like your personal experience. Do you feel like you're at a point in your life where you are much more aware of, let's say, periods of time where you feel like you might be slipping from God a little bit, or you don't feel as connected, or maybe you find yourself drifting? Because obviously, I'm sure that still happens with you too, because we're all human. But do you
For
find that
sure.
you're more aware and you're kind of able to catch yourself maybe quicker than before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think um, if you're not growing, you're dying, and I firmly believe that. And for me, as my relationship with God has cultivated, it has allowed me to my awareness has grown as well, right? My self awareness, my awareness of all the things that are not serving me, my awareness of my internal beliefs and my own limiting beliefs and my own limitations and all those ideas, because the progress and growth is not linear. We're growing at every level. We are
Yeah.
tested, right? At every level we have work to do. At every level there's growth. At every
Yeah.
level there's discomfort. So it doesn't matter where you're at. Because once you beat the level, then you're on to the next level,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
means there's going to be more challenges and more discomfort and more growth and more reward and more gain and a deeper love and all that sort of thing. So it's like, um, yeah, my awareness is always growing, because as long as you are maintaining your relationship with yourself and with God, then your awareness, I think, grows as a byproduct. That's what I've seen, at least in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because of that, then yeah, it's not like you're gonna live a perfect enlightened life, but when those moments occur, when you get into a reactive state, or you
Yeah.
get some emotion come over you, or you kind of blinded mentally for a while, whatever, you you're able to snap out of it a lot faster and faster and faster and faster. I mean, I remember we were talking about this years ago when we were working together. Like, it's not like it's a one and done thing.
Yeah.
It's like you just get quicker and quicker and quicker and better and better and better at it
Yeah.
until it kind of becomes irrelevant. But then guess what? Now you're at the next level. And now there's another thing.
So
So
true.
it's like a never ending cycle. But that's part of the process, right? The process is to continue growing in awareness, to continue growing in love, to continue deepening our relationship with the divine and God. And then through that, we keep accelerating, we keep growing, we
Hmm.
keep expanding along the path, and most importantly, we do what we're supposed to be doing here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so true. Yeah, I love that. And honestly, it's just so crazy for me to think back to like even the first couple sessions I had with you to now. I mean, it was a different
Yeah,
time in my life. I was a different person. It was before I even started my business. And yeah, I think it's just super cool how we like connected. And I mean, obviously, I believe nothing is coincidence,
for
and
sure.
that God places certain people in your life at certain times. But yeah, thank you again for that, because definitely the moment when you came into my life is when things really started to shift. Even though it was like over a couple years, that's when like a lot started to change for sure.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, and it's always cool to see people. Like we haven't probably connected in like
Oh,
in like a
wild.
year or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually had a conversation with another client of mine last week. I did another interview, and it was cool to see, because when you see people growing, everyone's on their own journey, everyone's growing at their own paces and whatnot. But it's cool when you see people that are growing, on the same wavelength as you, despite living different lives, despite being in different places and on different paths. It's always cool to see. It's cool to reconnect. And when I saw that you came back and she got the hijab on and all this stuff, I'm like, oh, what? Damn, okay, I gotta hear about this, right? So that was so great, funny. And yeah, I think it's really cool, and I see this revival both in Islam. I see it in Christianity and Catholicism. Even in some forms of Judaism, but mainly I've seen it really prominent in Catholicism and Islam, where a lot of the younger generation are coming back to that, which is really, really cool to see.
It's so cool. Like, my whole TikTok is basically just Christian and Islamic videos.
And, that's awesome.
Like, man, I love having conversations with Christians, like, specifically too, because we pretty much have all the same core beliefs, and like our lifestyles are so similar as well. So yeah, I was thinking about that a lot. Like, definitely our generation, I think there's some sort of shift happening, which is really nice to see. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says that by the end of time, holding on to your religion, holding on to your faith, will be like holding on to a hot piece of coal. And I firmly believe we're so close to those times, because I mean, look at the world. Like, it's so anti-religion. The religious people are crazy, and the people doing all the other stuff is normal and normalized. And it's hard. Like, even me putting on the hijab, I'm 25, turning 26. I live in Canada. I live in the Western world. There's so many reasons why I didn't want to put it on. You know what I mean? Like, the whole world is hypersexualized, especially with women. So much of our value and our worth is tied to our looks and our hair and our body. And that's honestly why I had to put it on, because I knew that I was just getting way too sucked into that, the society, like the societal norm of all of that. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the world is a wild, rocky place, and it's the direction that we're going. I mean, everything is basically anti everything that religion stands for, right? Everything. It's like, develop a relationship with God. Think for yourself, within the realm of that connection with God at the end of the day, right? Maintain traditional values, right? Go forth and multiply. Be fruitful. Start a family. Don't, go into this degenerate, hedonistic, dating Tinder scene of just perpetual endlessness, right? It's just this endless void, and I think that I don't, maybe religion's the answer for that. I'm not quite sure, but I haven't seen too much, if any, negative downsides of people deciding to, turn towards their religious values, because if we don't have religious values, what do we have? I mean, where does value come from if it doesn't come from God? Where do our virtues and our morals come from if not from God? So, without that, then, we look at the world today and we can understand why it is the way that it is.
100%.
Right?
And I think one of the big issues too, and I literally used to be one of these people, like, how often do you hear, I don't follow this, and that, but I think I'm a good person. I think God knows what's in my heart. I'm a good person. And
it's such a cope.
Like, what does that even mean? That's such a cop-out. Like, I used to say that too. I do all these things I'm not supposed to do, but I think I'm a good person.
Yeah.
No,
you think you're a good person, and you're lying to yourself, because you're by yourself at night as you're falling asleep, and you feel like shit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Why? Well, I wonder why, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, the entire beast system is designed to separate us from traditional values and that, and I think that's also why the big resurgence of both Christianity and Islam for the younger generation is emerging, because
Super cool.
I mean, the modern culture is extremely liberal. I mean,
Oh,
it's to the extreme degree,
it's extreme.
and
Yeah.
you know, so there's innately got to be a pendulum swing of conservative values,
Yeah.
and the whole point of conservatism is to preserve what works, and the whole point of
Exactly.
progressivism is to evolve and grow, and both of those things are innately good, right? I don't think there's a downside with progression and movement. I mean, technology is great, right? The things that we're
Yeah.
doing is great. I mean, we've right, you get a cut now, you don't have to amputate your whole leg. I mean, that's a great benefit.
Exactly.
But it also comes with a lot of problems. And that's where we need to also maintain the conservative aspects of that, right? What's working? Well, we've only believed in God since before even religion was around. You
Yeah.
know, like if we didn't, if it wasn't, if we didn't call it God, we called it something else, depending on where
Exactly.
you're at and what your language is. But we're all talking about the same thing here,
Exactly.
and so, and it's funny though because the quote unquote answer or solution to people that tend to go on either the atheistic route or the new agey route is like, well, if they're all saying the same thing, then why even use those terminology, or why even go down the path of religion? And the point is tradition, and the
Exactly.
point is the rituals, and the point is the community, and the point is being around like-minded people that you can build relationships with. If you look at throughout all of human history, we go back to any culture, they were oriented around a location
Yep.
and around a religion, right?
Exactly.
Some the same cultural beliefs towards spirituality, and in that case, we look at that. So I actually don't necessarily know if or think, not that I don't know. I don't think that this whole you know ridiculous amount of trying to just accept everyone and accept this and accept that is the
It's
solution,
wild. It's wild.
right? Because historically and evolutionarily, we're not meant to have too much diversity. Humans don't thrive well in diversity. What happens is the dominant, culture will persevere, and all the other ones get smothered out.
Exactly.
So there's no,
So
I
true.
mean, multiculturalism. All it does is erode culture. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I wish it was not like that, but that's if you observe historically regions that created multiculturalism. I mean, what culture is there?
Yeah.
Like we're
Yeah.
both Canadian.
Yeah.
Well, look at Canada. I mean,
Oh.
Canada's a multicultural center of the world. What culture does Canada have? I mean, it's a joke, right? Like we
Oh.
don't.
Yeah.
And then the only culture we go back to is the original like indigenous people that lived there before, which basically says every other religion, that came here is invalid, and
Irrelevant.
then this
Yeah.
is this is what it is. So that proves the point, that multiculturalism
So
is
true.
not, you know, there's a deep need for community and like communities, specifically from a religious sense, because it makes us feel together and it creates a
Oh.
sense of order. It creates a sense of not just physical order, but that's a huge
Exactly.
part of it, but a sense of spiritual order too. And we don't have the same types of you think about how many wars too have been fought over multiculturalism and trying
Oh.
to say this is right and this is wrong and that sort of thing. It's outrageous.
No, we're definitely alive during a crazy time for sure. And even, obviously you just got married, by the way. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
even when thinking about like having kids and stuff, which I'm sure is something you're thinking about, it's that is hard to think about. Like I want kids. I want many kids, until the one day I can have them. And you really have to be able to protect them and guide them like in the right direction,
Oh, for sure.
especially now. Because obviously you cannot shield them from the world. That's just not a reality. So you just have to equip them with the right tools to be able to navigate by themselves in this life as well. And yeah, it's a hard thing to think about. You really gotta know what you're doing as a parent for sure, because there's just things coming in left and right, and these kids are so susceptible to all of these messages.
Absolutely. Um, yeah. How does especially now that you're more um, now that you're practicing Islam, like more
Mm-hmm.
hardcore? How does social media play into that? Because obviously, if you look at just the current state, and yes, we do have algorithms, so it is a lot to do with who you follow and what you're looking at and what type of content you're consuming. But how does that? How do you balance, your faith and then continuing to obviously be present on social media? Because from a business standpoint, like, you need to be on social media, So that's always been the challenge for me is just trying to. For me, it's just try and consume as little as possible, right?
That's my biggest struggle right now, hands down. And I would say for many reasons. One, like, I literally the other day, and I'll be completely honest with you, I was on Instagram and I just got caught up comparing myself to all these other girls in, like, the fitness industry that have these super nice bodies. They're wearing their sports bras and booty shorts and this and that, and I'm like, I'm over here in my hijab, I look like a 12-year-old boy jumping rope, and it's but that's the point, right? Like, that's part of the test. It's so hard. So, I mean, there's different struggles as a woman on social media versus, like, social media in general, and I'm sure men have their different struggles as well, but that's something I'm struggling with because all of my income is from Instagram. Like, all of my clients are there. I'm still doing jump rope coaching full time, so that's still something I haven't figured out yet, but I have been spending way less time on there. Like, my total time on Instagram is maybe 45 minutes a day, so I never usually go over an hour.
That's good. Yeah, because that's a big thing nowadays, because these algorithms are designed to keep us on there as long as possible. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter, even if it's positive content, which it should be.
Yeah.
I was listening to an interview with Elon Musk, and he said that their main focus right now at Twitter is to reduce as much as humanly possible the negative experiences of people using the platform, which I thought was, like, that's pretty ballsy, and it's pretty crazy, because if you look at, I mean, the most platforms are literally designed to keep you on, whether it's a positive or negative experience, right? Whether you're watching garbage like dancing on TikTok, or whether you're watching some, like a podcast or something like that, it's designed to keep you there as long as possible. But then it's like, we have other things to do in the day, right? We have many other things to do in the day, and being on social media, for hours and hours and hours, it's just there's a certain point where it starts interfering with your progression. It starts interfering with the life that you want to live. Like, I genuinely, I don't mind spending time on social media, but I want it to be as productive as possible. I want it to be as creative as possible. It's either me catching up with messages, or it's me, sending out content, and if it's neither of those things, then you have to be very, very mindful with that, especially nowadays.
Yeah. So how are you?
And especially.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, how are you balancing that? Because I know obviously you get your, I'm sure most of your clients from social media as well too. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you figured out a way to balance that, or is that something you're still kind of?
I mean, there's not a single perfect outcome, I don't think, but for me, what's working is there's this. I've been more active on Twitter recently, and that's where I've been getting most of my clients from.
Oh,
but
okay.
Twitter has this awesome option. It's a separate plugin you can get on Brave or Chrome. It's called Zen Mode or Zen Writer. And what it does is it makes literally all parts of Twitter black except for when you're typing tweets.
No. Oh,
so there's literally nothing there. And then you can also edit it so that you can only see messages and what you're creating. So that you see nothing on the feed, right? So I try and do that as best as I possibly can when I'm just creating content and I'm sending out tweets or I'm making memes or whatever it is that I'm posting, videos. And then, I'll give myself a little bit of time each day, usually more towards the end of the day, when I can, just to see what people are up to. But I've curated my following list, like, very well, and I'm always cleansing it. Like, for Instagram, like, almost all of my following is just friends or direct accounts that give me a positive outcome that I really, really want. So I think that's really important too. Curating your following list is number one. Twitter has a really cool option. Instagram doesn't have this option, unfortunately, but Twitter has a really cool option where you can only see there's a For You page, which is dangerous, But then you have the following page, which is only people that you follow. So there's nothing other than people that you follow on that page. And then you can also create lists, which are just specific accounts that you follow that you want to stay updated on. So if you have like 10 or 20 friends that you want to just see what they're going on, because some people tweet like 20 times a day or 30 times a day or more, a day, and they're just spamming you, and you have to see all this garbage. So that's been a big thing. I don't really go on TikTok. Maybe once every 2 weeks or something like that. And if I do, I'm tending to just post a few videos and then get off there, because I just don't see the value. I don't get income or anything like that from that. So
yeah, I've gotten one client from TikTok. I have like 34,000 followers on there, but I don't really get that many clients from there. Maybe I should try Twitter though. I was kind of thinking about that the other day.
Yeah, Twitter's cool, and it's getting better for video content.
Oh, really?
You can actually post, like I'll probably end up posting this at some point on Twitter, the whole interview. Because you can post, I have like the Twitter Blue subscription, whatever, which is like $8 a month. But that allows you to post in 1080p up to like 4 hours for one video.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it's really cool in that sense, but it's a lot. It's really good for any sort of written stuff. So if you're writing, threads and information, Twitter is really helpful for that. If you're more video oriented, then obviously Instagram and TikTok are going to be your best friend for that. But I've geared more towards the written form, and you can still post videos and photos and stuff like that too. So yeah. I'm pro Twitter right now because of just how good it's gotten for censorship. I mean, that has been a big thing.
Yeah.
I've toned down my act a little bit over the last couple of years, but at the peak of it, it was bad, right? I mean,
my God.
The shadow banning was horrible.
Yeah. You got hit pretty bad with that.
Yeah. I mean, I probably could have been a little smarter in my game plan with that. But so. How is, because did you take any time off from like your business at all as you were kind of making this transition into Islam, or was this kind of just progressive? You're doing your business on top of this, because like how is that integrated, and specifically being an entrepreneur and now navigating this field, especially as a woman,
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I kind of took time off, like. I want to say basically for 3 to 4 months, I didn't try to get any clients. So I still had clients, and if old clients wanted to re-sign, I was okay with that, but I wasn't actively seeking anyone else. So luckily I was still making pretty decent money, but I really needed like that extra time to myself. And honestly, I was at a point where I just had, you know how it is. I mean, especially with the work that you do. I'm teaching people jump rope, but it's still a lot of like energy, and you know how it is with clients. Mm-hmm. They end up talking to you about other things in their life, et cetera, and I just was not at a place where I could take on any more than what I was already like dealing with myself. So I would say I got down to, like at the lowest point, I got down to maybe like 6 clients, which is still like, not insanely low. But yeah, I really just took a lot of time to be with myself. I ended up going off of Instagram for 2 months, which was more important than anything. Like, I wasn't so much worried about not having a ton of clients. I just needed to get off social media, because that, I guarantee you, if I didn't go off, I wouldn't have put the hijab on. Because I put it on when I was off social media, and I didn't come back to social media for like 3 or 4 weeks after that. I wanted to get like comfortable, like kind of figure out like why I'm really doing this without like any other external like influences or thoughts. So now I'm just kind of getting back, actively trying to get more clients, but it was a while where I was like, I don't really care how many I have.
Right. What do you think are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions about Islam?
About the religion as a whole?
Yeah, religion as a whole, or I mean, if you are thinking of specific areas, feel free to dive into those areas.
I think generally the biggest misconception is that women are oppressed in Islam, for sure. And what people don't even realize is that, like, back, in the times of our prophets and stuff like that, that's when women's rights were created. Like, we had rights as women in Islam long before there were ever rights in the Western world, which is super ironic. So that's by far the biggest misconception. And even when I came back to Instagram, I posted a story about a week ago, actually, so pretty recently, and I said to all my non-Muslims, I want to hear your opinion and understanding of the hijab. Like, I want to hear your honest opinion. Like, what do you think it is? What does it represent? I got so many good replies, and so many people started their message with, I'm really sorry if this offends you, but, and then they kind of gave me their answer, and it's pretty much all the same stuff. People are like, I kind of feel bad for women that wear it. I feel like, you know, they're miserable, they're unhappy, they're just doing it for their husband, they're not doing it for themselves. Mm-hmm. A couple people were like, I don't get it, like, you're young and beautiful, like, it's just hair, why can't you show it? So that's the biggest thing for me, and I even explained to people, I feel more free now than I've ever felt in my entire life. Before, I was literally trapped by societal expectations. I felt like I had to show my body. I had to, you know, be in these cute outfits and do this and do that just so people would follow me. And now I feel so empowered putting the hijab on and still doing what I was doing before. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to show you all that other stuff because it's not tied to my value. You know, it's not tied to my character, and that's one thing I love about the hijab so much, and it actually translates to barrier. So the actual word means barrier, and it's supposed to stand as a barrier from you in this world because this world is temporary. Mm-hmm. And I just think that that's so cool that is what the word means, and it serves as a very good reminder as well, because it's, I have moments all the time where I'm like, man, I don't want to wear this. I just want to take it off. It's too hot. It's this and that. But you always come back to, like, your why and kind of understanding why you put it on. But, yeah, sorry, that was kind of a long answer, but that would be the number one thing for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of cultures have seen the hair as, they call them, like, the antennas, you know, or a connection with God. And and that's why people wear, you know, turbans. And that's why people wear hijabs. I mean, I like that you said the word barrier. That's really interesting. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people, you know, they automatically assume that someone wearing a hijab or even a burqa is like this super oppressed woman. Yeah. I mean, meanwhile, you look at, especially in the Middle East, I mean, you look at some of these women, I mean, they're driving like freaking Rolls Royces. Exactly. They got the Birkin bags. Exactly. They got like 3 children. I mean,
like, trust me, they're not oppressed.
The ring is like freaking the size of my, you know, head. Like, it's crazy, right? So it's like, if that's oppression, man, you know?
Give it to me. It's so true. Can I
That's
ask,
some expensive oppression.
That's so true. And I know you probably don't have the same opinion as everyone else because you're like a godly man yourself, but did you have any, like, misconceptions, do you think, yourself when you saw, like, Muslim women in a hijab, or did you feel like, yeah, I get it?
I mean, I've always been like a jealous and possessive type of man, right? So, I mean, I don't want anybody looking at my woman. So to me, that just made sense, you know, from a religious standpoint. Now, you know, from like an egotistical, you know, kind of POV, I was like, okay, well, maybe that's, you know, maybe that is a little jealous or something like that. But, you know, from a religious standpoint, there's a reason for that, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, you shouldn't, like, why would you want anybody gazing sexually at your wife? Why would you want anybody, you know, looking at, you know, like that should be for your eyes only. And maybe that's, you know, that might sound a little misogynistic or whatever, but
no, it's true.
You know, it is true, because at the end of the day, you know, if as a man you're providing and protecting your wife and you're giving your life to her, I mean, at the end of the day, if bullets are flying, I'm flying in front of the bullets, you know. I'm gonna you know, I'm gonna protect, I'm providing, all that sort of thing. You know, I'm buying the house, I'm doing all this, car payments, credit card payments, all that stuff's on me. And I mean, that to me seems like the very least that, you know, that can be done, just out of respect, you know, out of respect to that. Just like you know, I'm not going around in public, you know, flinging my pee-pee around, you know, like what I mean? Like, I'm not, you know, it's like I'm not wearing like a thong in public, right? Like, you know, so it's like there's certain things that are just, you know,
To me, honestly, it makes sense, and I think what the other thing people don't understand, because everyone thinks, oh, it's just for the husband, it's just for the husband. Like, no, it's for you too. If you even think about it this way,
hmm
in our religion, when somebody gets married, like, I am going to get married to a guy that has never seen my hair or my body before. If you can fall in love with me without all of that, imagine, what it's
hmm
going to be like when you can see all of that as well. And it just all comes back to reflecting your inner beauty and your inner character without focusing on any of the external stuff. So, yes, it's a great thing for the men for sure. Like, they have you all to themselves, which I think makes your relationship so much more sacred. But
absolutely.
it gives the women so much more. Imagine how much more security and confidence they also have with their relationship with the guy as well, because they know he didn't just marry me because he likes my hair or because he likes my body.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
a really good
win-win.
point. Actually,
Yeah.
that's a really good point. Um, now, okay, obviously there's all those, because especially in the West, we hear of all these extreme stories and scenarios, and some of that, like, I don't know, like a woman trying to divorce her husband and he
Mm-hmm.
throws acid at her face or something. Like we've all heard kind of crazy
Yeah,
stories
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. What do you say to people that bring up like those extreme examples, which are obviously on the fringes? Like I don't see the majority of just like the majority of Christians aren't getting people to drink poisonous Kool Aid.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly. I would say it honestly comes back to what we were talking about earlier. There is extreme measures and extreme people in every community and every group,
yep,
inside and outside of religion. That yes, there are some extremely abusive and toxic Muslim men. That's not a secret. That is a real thing for sure.
yep,
And honestly, I think it's much different in the younger generations now. I think um, stuff like that, maybe not specifically throwing acid, but stuff like that was a lot more
yeah,
common, like in my parents' generation and the older generations. Now I feel like it's getting better with each generation for sure. So yeah, I would say to those people, like, there's always going to be people like that. There's going to be Christian men like that. There's also going to be crazy Muslim women, crazy Christian women. So it's not black and white.
totally. Now, one thing that I have noticed from a cultural perspective is there's a lot of Western influence starting to permeate religion,
Oh yeah,
and even specifically, a lot of Middle Eastern countries that are dominantly Muslim. They're getting heavily influenced by the West and the kind of hedonistic, degenerate,
yeah,
progressive culture, which would be really interesting to see over the next decade, 2 decades, of how that looks and
yeah,
whether or not Islam's able to
yeah,
withstand that.
yeah,
What are your thoughts on that influence? Because I'm sure like it's easier to see in the West because you're not surrounded by thousands of years of this religious culture being around you. It's more you're bringing the culture to the West. So how do you see, like, just from a, I guess,
yeah,
like a modern day perspective of that influence on it? Because it's clear, like it's not there. I mean, you can see it, right? Like I'm sure you notice it too, where even people that are practicing Muslims, I
hundred
mean, that's
percent.
going to be influenced. Same with Christianity. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't heard of a Christian virgin in a very long time,
Exactly, exactly.
right? Or I haven't heard of people that just have never tried alcohol or drugs
Yeah,
ever, in this day and age.
yeah,
So,
exactly. No, I think that's the biggest issue. That's the biggest issue for sure. And like you said, there's even people living in full Muslim countries that are still affected by the
yep.
West. It's unavoidable, honestly, at this point. And I think it all comes down to just everything being normalized around. Not you don't need to really follow the rule that strict, or oh, that's just a misinterpretation of this or that. And I think it all comes down to everyone just essentially deciding and making their own rules and just trying to change a lot of the things that God kind of commanded for us. So, yeah, that's I don't know. Like you said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because you see even so many Muslims that are quote unquote super practicing still getting caught up in a lot of the things that the Western society is pushing. And there's obviously many different avenues we could go down in terms of that topic, but it all comes down to individual responsibility, in my personal opinion. And you have to stay strong. Like, if we just conform to everything that the West wants
Yeah.
us to, which is a lot, then there's religion's done, and that's the end goal of what they want. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's cool to see that, Islam is, and there's kind of like a subsect of Catholics that are like this, that are, these are kind of, people call them like the Latin Catholics, where they wanted to bring back the Latin Mass, and they did, and that was like this whole big deal in Catholicism. But it seems to me that, the real last battle is wokeness versus Islam at this point in
Yeah.
the West. And
Yeah,
that's a pretty, that's a pretty balanced battle,
that's a
to be
pretty
honest.
balanced
Like, it's
battle, yeah.
if not, even a little bit lesser on the side of Islam, just based on the power that is behind these kind of mob mentalities, and it's a mind virus at the end of the day. You know, what do you, okay, like, let's just look at the example of people that are perhaps thinking about, you know, maybe they grew up Muslim and they want to get back into it and start developing that relationship with God. What is your, what would you say to them, if they're trying to develop that relationship while still, combating all this, craziness that's going on,
Yeah.
assuming that they're in the West?
Yeah. No, I love that question. That's really good. And honestly, I know this is super cliche to say, but if I can come back to my religion, like whatever your religion is, if I can come back to it and come back to it, I really believe anyone can, because I felt like super far gone and disconnected. And I think my biggest piece of advice would be, you have to do it for yourself and not anyone else. And when I say that, so I grew up in a pretty, I wouldn't say like religious, like we grew up in Canada. My parents allowed us to do a lot, but we were taught the basic things, like you can't date, you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't eat pork, no sex before marriage, things like that. So we were like, okay, like pretty basic rules, like I get it. But I never really asked any questions, and I never really understood, like, why can't we do this? Like, what's the big deal about drinking? So without sharing too much, naturally, like when I grew up, I just rebelled, because I was like, I couldn't do all these things, so I just wanted to do all of them. And that obviously led me down a pretty dark path, and it led me to the point where I knew I had to understand these things. So I was really like seeking answers. And for a while up to that, I was only doing these things because my parents told me so. If you're ever doing anything for someone else, you're going to hit a breaking point at some point, and you're not going to do it anymore. It's just simply going to happen like that. So that's kind of what happened with me. I was like, okay, I don't want to do this for them. I really do want to be connected to God. I don't know if it's possible, but I really want to try and get closer to Him again. So let me try and understand this for myself. So that's the whole kind of journey I went on for a whole year, and that's the piece of advice I would give to anyone. Like, you have to do it for yourself. You can't be trying to please anyone else besides God. That's the thing. If you're trying to please people in this world, it defeats the whole purpose. You have to be trying to please God.
For sure, yeah. I mean, it just becomes another facade, right? It just becomes this like, even if you just want to do it to please your parents, I mean, it's still a facade.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is to develop that relationship for yourself.
Yeah.
Because only then can you reap the benefits of it.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're trying to do something for your parents, or you're trying to do something for your family, or even your friends, or whatever, you're not going to reap the benefits of connecting with God. You're not going to reap and experience all the benefits that you get to experience when you've connected with God and developed your own relationship like that.
Exactly. It's so true. I really just think everything comes back to understanding. Like, even before I put on the hijab, it was something I was thinking about for, I would say, 7 or 8 months, but genuinely I thought there's no way I could do it. I admired women that wore the hijab. I thought, how do you do that? Like, that takes so much strength and courage, especially in the West. And I genuinely made the decision. I was like, there's no way. There's no way I could ever wear it. And then just, I feel like God just placed a desire in my heart. So I watched probably every YouTube video, every like lecture on why you wear it. Like I always thought, it's just for the husband. That doesn't make any sense. So if you don't understand anything, you're never gonna do it. And I think you really, really have to try and have an open mind. And you have to come to the conclusion that maybe you don't know everything. Or maybe everything you thought isn't actually true. And that was fully the case with me.
For sure. And I mean, it's kind of funny because you don't have a husband right now, and you're wearing a hijab, so that kind of defeats that whole argument, doesn't it?
Exactly. The amount of messages I got too, they're like, "Oh my God, you're married now," and I was like, "No, no, no, I'm not married yet." But that is something.
Hijab is not equal to a bindi.
Exactly. Yeah. I was like, wow, do people really still think that? But yeah, a lot of people were like, oh, I thought you only put it on when you get married. I was like, no, the whole point is to put it on before so that you find the right person.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Were there any of those answers and messages that you got that really surprised you?
No, I think everything met my expectations. I expected most people to say like, I kind of think they're oppressed, they're not free, you should live your life. There were a lot of non-Muslims that had like spot on answers though. I was like really impressed with some of the answers as well. So it was cool to see, because even myself as a born and raised Muslim, I still had the wrong idea of the hijab. Like how crazy is that?
Right. Yeah.
So I didn't feel offended or kind of surprised by any of the other answers people said, because I was like, yeah, I used to think that too.
And that's a really good point to bring up, and we can kind of dive into that before we start wrapping it up here, is that, you could be raised in a religion and even practice it, but until you start actively developing that relationship and doing the deep dive for yourself, both the historical deep dive into the etiquette and the culture, I mean, in the perfect world, your parents are going to tell you all of that information and be able to share that with you, but that's just not the reality, right? Yeah. We're busy. Especially if you're supporting a family, you're thinking about other things, and I think the older generation kind of they lost track of a lot of that, and they thought that if we just raise them in the religion, that was enough, and then we go to church or the mosque, and then that would be enough for them, and it'd all be good. And that was really kind of unfortunate, because I grew up Catholic and Christian, and that was kind of the same thing. It was like, we'll just outsource that for the most part. There were certain times having conversations with grandparents and stuff like that, or aunts and uncles would come over, and sometimes we'd get into some cool conversations and theological stuff, which is cool. But for the most part, we're not taught why. Even in school, I went to Catholic school, and we never, we're not really taught, even in religion class,
that's crazy.
like, why, what is the real significance of this? What is the real significance of these specific traditions? Why do we do this? Why are these rules in place? Why did, not even breaking down, like scripture and breaking down, the word. I mean, that alone is kind of crazy. At church, they would kind of maybe riff off of like a chapter or something like that. But that was the most, they would never break it down. And it wasn't until I started breaking it down myself and listening to other people breaking down the word, then I was like, okay, this makes a lot more sense to me. And then you start to see the connections yourself in other ways that you just wouldn't have seen, right? Like, I'm sure now reading the Quran and memorizing the Quran and studying the Quran is like, you're making all these sorts of connections and being able to apply it in various aspects of your life that you just weren't able to before, because,
crazy.
It's
crazy. Yeah, now when I read it, it's just like, everything makes sense. I'm like, that checks out. That makes sense, where before I was like, I don't understand any of this. Well, of course you don't understand any of this. You've never even questioned really anything yourself, and you've never even made that intentional relationship with God. So, that's cool hearing about your experience too. And I do have one question. So do you go to church? Because I always find this is a cool thing to talk to people about too, because I know a lot of people, especially Christians and Catholics, kind of finding like a specific church can be a bit of a journey. Have you found that with yourself, or do you do like most of your own prayer at home? How is that process for you?
Yeah, I mean, right now, just based on my living situation, I've been kind of traveling. I haven't been anywhere for longer than a few
Yeah,
months at a
yeah,
time. So right now I haven't been able to find a church, and we also would like to do that once we found a place to really settle.
yeah,
Then I want to look in that area. But right now, no, it's been sometimes I watch some services online and stuff like that. But most of the time, it's just about me cultivating my relationship with God myself, And I wouldn't even necessarily call me a Catholic now, necessarily, but I would say, growing up Christian and that, I read the Bible and I enjoy the word. But for me, like I said, it's really about developing my own relationship
yeah,
with God. And at this time and place, it doesn't, that is not the going to church is not really
yeah,
a practical thing right now. But I'm not opposed to it. It's just about this is kind of like a logistical thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
If well, I'm saying that, but it's like at the same time, if I really really
yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
go, I
yeah.
could find somewhere, right? But I prefer, I prefer like my Sundays are really spent just spending time with my family and
That's
enjoying
awesome.
enjoying my morning. I have my nice silent
It's
morning, and I just
amazing.
pray and meditate and do a little workout, and that's my
That's
that's my day. And to me,
that's
that's
awesome.
that's I know God through that means, and that to me, at this time at least, based on where I'm at and what I'm doing right now in my world, that's the best option I have at this moment. And I know that will change for sure,
Yeah,
and it'll continue to grow and evolve. But yeah, that it's to me, it's really about the work that you're doing outside of the once
I
a
love
week
that.
type of
I
thing,
love that.
right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that too because again, everything's not black and white. You could have people that are going to the church every Sunday. You could have people that are going to the mosque 3-4 times a day, but if you step out of that building and then you just like clock out spiritually,
Exactly.
then it's kind of irrelevant. And I know it's a bit different with like the church and the mosque. Like we obviously have 5 prayers a day, so
Yep.
the mosque is pretty empty for the most part. Most people try and go to either the morning or the night prayer, so that's something I've been trying to do is just go at least like once a day, which I've been pretty bad at. But yeah, most of my connection is coming from being alone in my
Yeah.
room and kind of doing my own prayers as well. But I will say, at the same time, praying with other people is
Very
huge. It's
powerful. Yeah.
huge. Like during Ramadan, the mosque is packed. Like if you're not there on time, you're praying outside, which is also very cool too that people do that. But
Hmm.
I truly believe I wouldn't have come as close to God if I had stayed home every day during Ramadan. Like I was in the mosque every day from like 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. and it was
Wow.
crazy. It was so powerful. It was like
Yeah.
addicting. Like you just didn't want to leave because you really felt like you were in that safe space. And I mean, same thing with like group meditation, stuff like
Hmm.
that. Like anything in congregation is so much more powerful.
For sure. Yeah. Spiritual and religious community is I really believe it's like the backbone of our society and culture in general.
Yeah.
And I think anybody, regardless of where you're at, and I don't think you need to do it through an organized religion
Mm-hmm.
to experience the benefits of that. I mean, as long as it's not, some crazy, ridiculous new agey stuff,
Exactly.
I think, there's a lot of benefit to that. I still enjoy going to yoga classes and stuff and meditating in that setting. And that's not for everyone, but that's what that's that to me that's basically
Yeah.
what's given me that little bit of sustenance that you would get at a church or you would get
Oh, for
in
sure.
other forms.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Just having like-minded community, and that's the cool thing is I mean, at least the specific studio and the people that I know who I'm friends with, the people that run the studio, they're very grounded individuals. I
That's
mean, it's
awesome.
not some
Yeah.
crazy, like I've been to some
Yeah.
yoga places that are a little crazy.
Oh yeah.
And,
Oh yeah. Definitely.
so it's not really, for the most part, it's not really any of that. And when it is, I'm not there. So
Exactly. You can tell the vibes pretty much right away, anyways. So it's not a place you would
Exactly.
be in. But yeah, I totally agree with
Exactly.
you on that, and that's why I don't even judge people who are like not Muslim or not Christian or this and that. I've been through so many struggles myself, and I think everyone has their own struggles, and I think we all have an opportunity to connect with God some way or
For sure.
another, but you have to want it.
Yeah. And then you also have to understand that the importance at the end of the day is this spiritual community, which for the most part, the most, at least majority, not everybody, but I would say a good 75 to 80%, the of the most uncorrupted form of that would be mainstream religion. Now, not everybody's belief systems and that sort of thing fall into those categories, and
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm blessed in a sense that I get to extrapolate a lot of benefit from a lot of things,
Hmm.
and before it was kind of in a disconnected, what we were talking about earlier, a kind of facade way, right? Of just like,
Yeah.
oh well, I don't really abide by anything, and I accept it all. It all has the same thing. But now it's a lot deeper than that, and the I would say the main difference is my own relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because when you develop your own relationship with God, just like what you were saying, how you were talking to a lot of Christians and you could agree with a lot of the things that they were saying, or most of the things that they're saying, right? It's like I think that's the coolest part, is being able to recognize the overlap
Yeah.
between those various forms, right? And the good things that they're saying, while staying grounded to your own relationship with God. I think that's the most important thing, and not getting too caught up into your attention's everywhere, right? Just
Exactly.
making sure that your attention's focused. I mean, I love listening to, when I was in Greece this earlier this
Oh
year.
wow.
A lot of amazing Greek Orthodox
Yeah.
churches,
Yeah.
and a lot of those hymns sound, a lot of them, some of them are even in Arabic. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities, and they did have a lot of mosques, and you would hear, so you got to appreciate it. And I think part
Oh
of
yeah.
understanding culture and understanding the true motive behind spirituality, which is that, like I said, that kind of web or that thread to God, is being able to see we're all human and we're all trying to get to something bigger than ourselves. We're all trying to understand something a lot bigger than ourselves. And
Exactly.
that path's going to look different for everybody. But what matters is, at the end of the day, are you a good human being?
Yeah.
Do you have your own connection with God, and are you a good human being?
Exactly.
Not do you think you're a good human being,
Exactly.
but are you
Exactly.
genuinely a good human being?
Exactly. Because there's a
Right?
difference.
Are you genuinely kind? Are you genuinely, and being kind and being a good human being doesn't mean that you're not firm in your beliefs. It doesn't
Exactly.
mean that you're able to
Yes.
just blindly accept everybody and anything. No, that's not the point. But the point is not judging. The point is just, at the end of the day, just saying, I mean, maybe I see this person and it looks like they're lost, right? I don't judge them, because there's been many times in my life where I've
Oh
been lost,
God. Yeah.
right? So I can't judge them, but what I can do is I can pray for them. I can wish them the very best, and I can hope that they find God in whatever way, shape, or form that God can peek through all the craziness that they're going through.
So
And to
true.
be honest, when I look at the world through that lens, there's such a deep compassion, right,
Oh my
that
gosh. So
emerges,
much more compassion.
which is
So much
which is
more.
ironic, because the kind of narrative around believing in God and living through God and being religious, etc., is that it's kind of restrictive in that, and that it makes you less kind, which is ironic. It's the opposite, you
Yeah,
know.
I like that you said that because I think that's one thing that another misconception about religion as a whole, not even Islam, that bothers me so much is I don't even like the term non-religious people, but like non-religious people, you know, think that people that are religious are judgmental
Hmm.
and rude, and they think they're better than everyone else. And I've even had people in my past say that to me, and I've tried my best to make it clear, like, trust me, I'm not judging you. Trust me, I
Hmm.
have so many sins and things that I'm not proud of with myself. And yeah, I think that's another major misconception because I really think it's the opposite. I've become a lot more empathetic, in my personal opinion, towards people and their struggles since coming back to God myself because I want everyone to have that. You don't want other
For sure.
people, like, everyone is so
Exactly.
empty and lost. And when you feel that within yourself, you know how hard it is. Of course, unless you're evil, you're not going to be wishing that on anyone else. So yeah, I think that's a big misconception.
Huge misconception, and and for the most part, and again, like we talked about earlier, like there's going to be extremists. Obviously, there's going to be people that are judgmental and stuff. And to be honest, I'm not even saying that people shouldn't be judgmental in their totality. I mean, you need to have discernment.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to say, this is wrong. I think that's very important. But I think people also misconstrue this idea of right and wrong from a moral and ethical perspective to hating a person and not loving them. And I think that's at the end of the day, we're all God's children, and some people are going to seek towards God and live through that, and other people are not. And that's life at the end of the day. I wish them well, but I can also recognize that there is a right and wrong. I mean, there actually is a right and wrong. So shocking news, like, wow, there's a right and a wrong. And I don't necessarily think there is a singular right path to God. I think that there's many paths to God.
Agreed.
But there are definitely wrong paths that move away from God objectively. Like if you're a heroin addict, right, and you're just doing smack and having sex with prostitutes, that's not bringing you closer towards God.
Probably not.
I mean, that objectively, it doesn't matter what path you take.
Exactly.
But I've met, wonderful Buddhists that I can have great conversations with. I've met wonderful Muslims that I can have great conversations with. I met wonderful Christians and Jews and people of like all sorts of religions and backgrounds and amazing things. Hindus, Sikhs. I mean, you name it, right?
Yeah.
And we're all able to have conversations for the most part. And I think a large part of that is due to the work that I've done on myself, to be able to not be in that, a state of hatred. Because I think hatred is the devil, right?
Oh, it is.
Shaitan!
It is. Shaitan. It is Shaitan. Exactly.
Right?
No, but
because if God is love, then the opposite of God, which would be, hate and fear, that's the devil.
Oh, devil's working overtime these days, for sure. And I totally agree with everything you just said. And at the end of the day, with the reality of the world and the direction that we're going in, that's why I just get so excited if anyone believes in God. I don't really care, honestly, what religion you are. And that's why I love having these conversations, because it's a lot more rare these days. Like, I've never even had a lot of friends that had like a super strong faith in God. So even when you asked me to come on and have this conversation today, I was super excited, because I think it's more important now than ever, regardless of what your specific religion is.
For sure. All right, now I'm going to put you on the hot seat.
Oh, all right.
All right. So I'm just going to say some words, and you're just going to kind of say the first thing that pops into your head, all right?
All right. Let's do it.
Okay. First word is bacon.
Unless it's beef bacon.
I just had some beef bacon this morning.
How
actually.
good
It was
is it?
Amazing. Out of this world.
We got some beef bacon from our local butcher, obviously.
Oh,
it's so good. It's so hard to find. It's so good.
Yeah, it's really good.
That was funny.
Instagram models.
Toxic.
Toxic?
Toxic. Fake. Is that bad to say? That's what came to my head.
Ayahuasca.
Drugs. New age. Hallucinations. I don't know. I'd love to hear your opinion on that, maybe later.
Eating the bugs.
Do not do it. The bug movement makes me so mad.
There's this whole I don't know if you actually know this term, but there's this whole movement. It's like the trad movement.
I've actually never heard of that. No.
Okay, it's basically like traditional living, usually Christian, homesteading, like all that sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
That's your response.
All I have to say to that is a hard yes. That's
yes,
how it should be.
Okay. All right. Seed oils.
Oh my god. The worst thing you could possibly put in your body, stay away from them at all costs.
Doing hard things.
It's necessary for growth.
The Quran.
The word of truth, in my opinion.
Social media as a whole.
Good and bad parts, very hard to navigate, and I think needs to be dealt with in moderation, to keep it short.
Muslims on Tinder.
Haram.
Haram!
Oh, I love the haram ones. That's too good.
Limiting beliefs.
Will hold you back in life. You taught me that honestly more than anyone. You got to break through the limiting beliefs if you wanna grow.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think of Christianity?
I think it's the closest thing to Islam and has the most fundamental beliefs that line up with Islam. I love Christians. I love having conversations with them. Of course, there's some things I disagree with, but I would say like 90% of it is pretty much the same as Islam.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know that Islam recognizes Jesus as a prophet.
That's crazy to me when people... I guess I just always thought people knew that he's one of our most beloved prophets, but I guess not.
They don't. Nope.
Yeah, we
It's
love
a very... yeah. Which I thought was really cool when I first figured that one out.
Yeah, it is cool, right?
For sure. Butter.
The best health food ever. I'm not kidding.
I agree.
I love that you think that.
Yep.
It's true.
Actually, I just got my grandma. Okay, just got my grandma on the butter wagon.
No way. That's impressive.
Yep.
That's impressive.
Every time I go over there, I throw out the canola oil.
Oh,
And I just leave olive oil and butter. And finally, she got red pilled. She hired a health coach for like a few weeks, or like a 6-week or 12-week program, and she finally convinced her that to only cook in butter and olive oil. And I was like, praise the Lord,
that's
right?
huge. Yeah.
I know.
Cold butter
It's big.
out of the fridge is like the only snack
the whole boomer generation, I mean, they got psyoped so hard into the canola oil, right? And how it's good for your heart.
Yeah.
And, margarine, yeah. Can't believe it's not butter.
Can't believe it, yeah. Well, I can believe it, actually.
I can believe it when I have a heart attack, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I've converted most of my family to carnivore, so it's good.
What do you think of veganism?
Oh. You got another 2 hours? I'll put in one sentence. The worst diet, not only for the human body, but also for the planet.
For sure. And artificial intelligence.
A bit scary to me, to be honest. I don't know too much about it. I feel like I don't read that much about it because I don't know how I feel about all that, but it scares me a little bit.
For sure. And most important question, did you have fun?
This was a blast. I feel super, super grateful, honestly, that you had me on today, and it was super nice to connect. I feel like we could have honestly talked for about 5 hours, so it was a great conversation.
For sure. Yeah, no, it was a blast. And how can people find you? And if they want to get into jump roping and start moving their bodies and improving their health and fitness, how can they find you?
Yes, go to munaskipscoaching.com if you want to actually sign up to coach with me. But all of my social media is the same, just at Munaskips, MUNASKIPS, Instagram.
And we'll put all
TikTok,
the links below on YouTube here.
All of it, yeah, we'll put the links in there. If you want to jump rope, come find me.
Yeah, she's the best. She's the best.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, it's been a blast. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm super glad we were able to do this and organize this. And we'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to have you on my YouTube channel next, too. We'll have to do that.
Sounds good to me.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Will. Appreciate it.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. And go check out Muna. And if you're not already following me, make sure you do that. Love you guys. Take care.
Yeah.